Welcome to the video recording of the first in a series of 4 of the ABCs of ADUs. Tonight, the topic is how to choose a contractor and designer.
So when I met with Dr. Jill Shook and she told me about her faith-based advocacy for all affordable housing, and ADU is one of those options, it's one of the tools or one of the pieces to the puzzle, I was hooked. And I've been a part of the group ever since. And if anyone is familiar with Pasadena, the last 3 years have been very exciting in our ADU world. The impact fee for properties under 750 square feet have been removed. And that was due to policy on advocacy at our local level, and then policy at the state level. So there's a lot of layers of advocacy that have been going on. We have some really great team members that have been helping guide us and giving us the information and the education that we need to move forward. I'm going to have some of them introduce themselves in a little bit, and we're going to go over a couple of just basic points before our presentation begins. At the end, there will be a question and answer portion where at any time during the presentation, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we will be addressing all of your questions. So I hope that with all the changes, I too will build an ADU. And I look forward to anybody else who's interested in building ADUs for affordability, to rent to our neighbors, to make our community stronger. If you would like to work together, we can build kind of a support system going forward in this process, which although it is a tiny home, it is not a tiny feat. It is quite a tough endeavor. And so I hope that we're providing support for you through this forum and through our group. I'm going to now do a couple of polls just so we can get some ideas of who are helping and who's on the call tonight. So Jill, if you could go ahead and start those polls. So if you have the poll pop up on your screen, if you could go ahead and complete it, it's about 6 questions, and then just hit submit.
Well, the budget jumps from 125K to $1 million.
I like the ADU with the 10 stories in the elevator.
Yeah.
I should have put a $200,000 option. That's probably more reasonable for many of the ADUs. But.
Okay, another few seconds to finish that up. Jill, can you let Andrew in?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for telling me. I was focused on the survey. Shall I go ahead and end the poll?
Yes, please.
Here are the results for you all to see. Can you see them?
Yes, thank you. So to house a family member, 1.
Mm-hmm.
Detached ADU built from the ground up. No, just a few of us. And 125,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, stop share. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for completing that. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to my co-chair, Len, who's going to go ahead and share a little bit of information on ADUs.
Well, hello and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. As Anne-Marie said, I'm Len Tang. I am someone who's seeking to build an ADU myself, and I lead a local church here in Pasadena called Missio. We do think, as Anne-Marie already said, and we'll just keep these comments brief before we turn it over to our architect and speaker tonight. But most of you probably know just that the ADU approach, we feel like, is a decentralized way to tackle the housing problem. It's kind of like solar panels as a decentralized power plant, right? That in one, like each homeowner can kind of do their part to tackle this big problem, kind of one lot at a time. So we do like this idea of gentle infill. You've probably seen a diagram like this that looks at the, 4 or 5 different kinds of ADUs, and not shown here is the junior ADU, which is an enclosed area within it's a part of the existing footprint of a house. But most folks tonight are looking at the detached ADU, so it'll be standalone. As many of you know, again, building an ADU is like building a tiny house with all of the amenities, and so that it does tend to be more complex than people initially realize, and I'm sure all speakers will talk about that. To think about, as you're designing it, the purpose and how that might change over time. After you house a family member, what might be a next step, and kind of thinking about those things as you do the design. And then, of course, considering your budget, both your financial budget and the timeline in which you hope to complete that. We talked earlier, people talking about prefab, and those, it's not cheaper per square foot. It is faster, and time is money. So that is a consideration. And then what are the challenges that you're facing specifically in building an ADU? And if you wanted to just say that, like, since most people haven't started, if you want to just drop into the chat too, like, hey, what's kind of holding you up right now? What's the main obstacle? And if you're on this call tonight, it could be because you haven't selected an architect or a contractor. So if you want to drop in the chat, we'd love to kind of hear a little bit about that. Just a few resources here. The Making Housing Community Happen, which is hosting tonight, their website is there, makinghousinghappen.net. Our ADU team just has created a simple Google site that's bit.ly/ADU resources. It's case sensitive, but it has a few just kind of high level overview of the main aspects of financing, designing, permitting, and building an ADU. So there's pages on each of those. And then the City of Pasadena ADU site has more details about the permitting process. So yeah, those are some, and we can send these slides out afterwards if that's helpful. And then lastly, I'm going to just turn it back to Anne-Marie, who's going to introduce tonight's speaker.
I am very, very pleased to share the next speaker with you all. When we were speaking about ADUs and what they can accomplish, I was just really struck by Pooja's sincerity, and her mission, connecting your environment to your health and your well-being. And it touched me. So like I've told a couple of people about it, because if your focus is in housing or in an affordable housing, it's really wonderful when you meet like-minded people who are at that same place where they want to see as many people being housed and secure in their homes. It's very beautiful. I'll get to her introduction. She leads her own firm as a principal. Her design practice is based on more than 20 years of experience on a diverse scale of environmentally sustainable projects. Her desire is to shape the community and manifest projects locally and internationally. She has designed, detailed, and managed multiple building types. Her focus is on community-oriented projects that have resulted in the creation of self-sustaining communities that have positively shaped the urban fabric. Her goal is to make design accessible for all and to contribute to transforming spaces and places for people for the greater good. She is the founding co-chair of the Women in Architecture Committee of the AIA Los Angeles chapter, and she serves as a board of directors for the AIA Los Angeles. Pooja has an undergraduate degree in architecture from Delhi and postgraduate degree from the Sci Arc, and is a LEED accredited professional. She's also award-winning and just a genuinely kind person. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Pooja, if you'd like to go ahead and share your presentation.
And thank you for that very, very, very generous introduction. Thank you. So what Anne requested me to do was, and can everybody see my screen? Or if you can't see this screen, can you let me know, Anne?
We can see it if you can just do it in present mode so it'll be larger.
Of course, give me 1 second, please. Okay, so when Anne said, could you put a presentation together, that helps folks understand how do you select, your architect. So what I did was I thought about it in the manner that what does a good architect do? So if I explain that, then you would be able to understand how to choose your architect as well. So a good architect needs to understand your ADU project and how you live and how you want your ADU to function. A good architect should be able to visualize and detail the project well. They will help you select your colors, your materials, and your finishes. They should be able to help you arrive at a budget and stay within your budget and be able to value engineer. And what I mean by value engineer is that a design has phases, and as you develop your design and keep detailing it, you need to make sure that the project stays on budget. So if it doesn't stay on budget, you value engineer it. That's what value engineering means. And a good architect then creates, once the design is done, they submit it in the form of plan check documents so that you can receive a permit. It will help do all of the work in terms of interacting with the city, making sure everything is taken care of, and then be able to help you pull the permit and then guide you in selecting a contractor. And they'll be on site periodically to make sure that the contractor is following all of the design documents. And that's called the construction administration phase. And so that's what a good architect should be able to do. And so what's the selection process look like? And one of the questions always that comes up is, for your ADU project, or for that matter, any residential project? Do you need an architect or do you need a designer? And what is the difference? So really, you don't need a licensed architect to design your ADU and to submit it. You need, for any project which is a single family residential, or a project that's called in an R2 zone, or a residential 2 zone, because our city is made up of multiple zones. R1 is single family residential. R2, you can put up to 4 units. Up to a property which is zoned R2, you do not need a licensed architect. You can work with a designer. You just need to make sure that whoever you work with, whether you work with an architect or a designer, they have the right experience and they understand code, and they know construction, and they're able to, they have the experience to be able to do what you're wanting them to do for your project. What is the difference between a designer and an architect? An architect is a designer who goes to design school and architecture school, and then after graduating from architecture school, they can be called a designer. And then they sit for licensing examinations, much like doctors and lawyers do, to become a licensed architect. Now, there are also designers who don't go to architecture school, and they are, they may go to interior design school, and or they may have some kind of a design background to them. So that's sort of the difference between an architect or a designer. Where can you find one? On the internet, you can Google Instagram. On Instagram, you could find people on House. You can find people on Remodelista, which is again a website. You can also go to the American Institutes of Architects, or AIA LA chapter, and you can look for small design practices to look for a good architect as well. How do you initiate communication? So let's say you found someone either by word of mouth or through these internet sources. You email them, find a time to speak on the phone, share your brief ideas about your project. If you can, I would encourage you to schedule a walkthrough of the site or the property with you, because, architects are visual people, and we all need to be able to walk through the place and actually listen to what your needs are, and what the site is, and what your property has. And then, as you sort of have these conversations with them, you'll assess if they're the good fit for you. Can you talk to them? Are you going to be able to express to them what you like, what you don't like? Are you going to be okay with disagreements with them? You have to assess comfort or fit. And then, part of that process is also ask them for referrals. Who are their past clients, and, speak to at least 2 or 3 people who have worked with them. So as a part of that entire process, step 1 is for you to share your vision. That is, what are your basic needs? What is your wish list of wants? And what are your ideas? Because that gives the architect also some context from where you're coming from. So share with them what you you're looking for. You may have some ideas, or you may have limited ideas, and you may want, you may just say, I want an ADU with, 2 bedrooms. I may want to be able to house my mother, or I might want to put it on rent. So, you identify your needs with your architect, and also express to them whether you want it for, as a rental income, for your own use, as a mother-in-law flat. And are you thinking about it as a garage conversion? Are you thinking about adding it? Are you flexible? Or what is the best way that the architect thinks that your need can be accomplished? Or do you want something detached? Or do you want under the same roof? Do you want to be able to convert the same house into two? And if you have any environmentally sustainable goals, please share those. It is always important, in my opinion, to share your budget with your architect so that you can be realistic about what you can spend, and therefore what is it that you can get out of it. Because construction costs a basic amount, and then you can add up as many finishes as you want as well, which will cost more. And then if you have, and so what the budget does is gives the architect the idea, as to how much area and how, whether, you can fit in X number of bedrooms or not. Can you fit in the right amount of bathroom space or not? What kind of finishes can fit within that budget? So that's what the architect is able to help you do, is arrive at whether what you think you're going to be able to, are you going to be able to meet that or not? And then if you have any time constraints, you should share that as well. So for example, let's say you did want a family member to move in by a certain date, you should be able to share that so that the architect can create a detailed schedule and tell you what if it's feasible and realistic or not. And then you want to be able to identify any constraints. What is it that you know about the property? Are there any easements on it? Do you plan to live in the house during construction? So then that makes a difference to how the architect will design something or even phase something as well. So I'll show you an example. In this case, in orange is actually the detached garage. And we're in the process of converting that detached garage of that single family home that you see in white into the mother-in-law unit. And one of the requirements of the client was, I want my mother to have privacy, but I want us to have privacy as well. And that, down the line, we might think of putting it on rent, but down the line, so we want to be able to have privacy as well. And so this was one example of that. And so I'll quickly show you what we did here. This is sort of visualizing, sort of bringing to the table what, the client really wanted. So here we took that garage, and it was for, it's a normal 20-foot by 20-foot garage. And we put in tall patio doors as the entrance. And we put in tall patio doors again, so that there was, a link to the outside and a little back patio, a private back patio for, for the mother. And that's this little piece, this finisher, that's where the bathroom is, and that's the wall kitchen. And we gave a separate space for the bed and a separate space for the, sort of a lounge area. And we also gave plenty of light, because, she wanted to make sure that she's not claustrophobic, that, her eye was able to sort of feel like it was connected to the outside. And so especially when spaces are small, you want to bring in more light so that the space feels big enough. And this is the view looking from the other side as an example. So this is you're standing where the kitchen is, and you're looking at the entertainment unit area, sort of the storage wall, if you will, and a little space where the mother could sit and do paperwork, or it's a little study area. So this was an example. So really what you want is that your architect should be able to write you the proper program, a proper proposal that is in words, be able to write down everything that you've said is what your program needs are. They should be able to write in their proposal the scope of work and the deliverables. and does the scope of work include interior design or not? They should write what is a budget and give you a preliminary budget. I like to do that. I like to always give a preliminary budget. And I like to put in a schedule and a fee and a payment schedule. So that's what should go inside a good proposal. And then then the steps of the design phases include feasibility and concept design, which identifies what are the city requirements, any site constraints, to set any easements on the property, and initial design ideas and options. And then you go into the design phase where you're doing design development. And so as the architect or the designer is working through the design, they should be able to visualize your ideas in the 3D form that I just showed you. So that's a part of the design development process. And they should be able to help get a preliminary cost estimate. And I like to work with a contractor. I have Miguel as well, who I recommended that should be a part of this. I like to work with Miguel because, I feel that a good contractor and a good architect make for a good team, and that, you'll check on what's expensive, what's not expensive, and put together a good cost estimate and make sure that the design is aligned with budget. And so those are basically all of the, all of the things that a good architect should be able to do. I'm going to open it up to questions if that works.
Well, I think it would be a good time to introduce Miguel so that we can know who else is answering the questions tonight. And there's a couple of questions that came up in the chat that we'll address. But Miguel, would you like to introduce yourself to the team?
Of course. Thank you very much. My name is Miguel Ramirez. I have a construction firm. I just branched out of a big company last year. I've been doing residential commercial work. I had the pleasure to work with Puya. She's a really very effective and qualified architect for when it comes to ADUs development, affordable housing. I've been doing construction for the last 20 years. And I can tell you that ADUs is a really great opportunity for homeowners to extend their income, either for family needs or for neighbors in the community. The requirements for ADUs are so simple that it's a great opportunity for everyone. And what else I can say is it's not expensive compared to creating a new unit in your home. And plus the requirements are really simple and allow for many zoning to build them without having any risk constraints, I would say, to that. So it's a really great opportunity for everyone.
Thank you so much, Miguel. So I'm sure there's going to be some questions coming up, but one of the last questions it just showed was, when you're building for an ADU and you're looking at such small spaces, I think, Pooja, you mentioned in that last project that you had, you used the wall space for storage, for a desk unit, and that you used, I believe, the skylights and the paneling, the glazed paneling, to make the space look larger, and kind of multi-use of the outside to make an extension, to make it feel like it was a larger space. So what are some examples of other small space usages? Is it over garage? What would you say is something that is being used right now?
Well, before I answer that question, thank you for summarizing what I had described. And I think color and materials makes a big difference as well. When it's a small space, you want to use colors that are more reflective. You don't want to use colors that are darker. Lighter colors help a lot. You want to, if possible, plan in advance what are your storage needs and be able to actually provide for them, especially in a small space. I like to think about the idea of what's called borrowed landscape. That is, if you're in a space and your eye goes towards the outside and goes beyond, then your perceived space ends up becoming much bigger. It goes to where your eye will extend itself to. And so that's where the architect or the designer will come in to make sure that a small space is configured in a manner that doesn't feel claustrophobic. So you want to choose your color and your materials appropriately. Now, to answer Anne's question, you know what, there are many ways of doing ADUs. You can convert a garage. It has its issues associated with it, right? So you have to underpin the foundation of the garage. If you want to, use the volume of that garage, then you have to put, you have to do things to the existing structure to be able to put shear panels in it. Sometimes it's easier to build from scratch. It depends upon the situation. If you're going to go another story above a garage, again, it has its issues associated with cost. But if that's the way you have to do it, then because that's the best way of utilizing the space, then that may be. So every house and every project and site and every client and every homeowner has their needs. Sometimes adding to the existing house works better because you might be able to get more yard that way. So it really depends on your need, how you want to use the space, kind of privacy, the interaction that you want to have with the person who's going to use the ADU, and how do you best utilize your property. So there's no one size fit all, if that answers the question.
That does, and a couple of people have mentioned that they're considering projects, but they haven't begun the process. They just know they have a space that they're looking to use. One of the things that, as we've been doing this, we have people say, well, how much is it going to cost me? And from our discussion, you mentioned that example that you just showed us, there was an extra cost in putting in a skylight. There was an extra cost in having the glazed tall walls. So let's just say you said, absolutely, I want the most basic. It would still be dependent from site to site, correct? Is that?
It is site to site. If you were just saying, I'll do a garage conversion, right? And let's say you have a standard 20-foot by 20-foot 2-car garage. Then as an example, if we were looking at that same project, and if I was to scale that down from a budget perspective, then I would, yes, have to remove the skylights. We would have to reduce those patio doors and possibly put just a glass door, sort of a normal glass door and a window on either side. That's going to affect the way you feel in the space. But, those are some of the strategies you have to use in reducing cost. The example I gave, we had, taken out all, we basically used the entire volume of the garage. So we had, reconfigured the structure of the way the roof was laid out. And so a much easier way of doing that is you don't take out all of that structure. You get much less height, but then you save cost. So that's what's called value engineering, where you basically say, here's, the best that I can make out of a garage versus now I want to make it simpler. Now these are the ways I can make it more cost effective.
And one of the ways to make it more cost effective is to have the team from the beginning be on the same plane of what the budget is, correct?
That's exactly correct.
Okay, so just in talking to Pooja, I came to realize many mistakes that I made along the way. And I think one of the most important things that I came away with is your purpose is going to change. So maybe right now it's for a mother-in-law unit, maybe down the line it's for a graduating child who's gone to college and has come back, or maybe it's going to be a rental. Maybe you'll consider renting to Section 8 or to do another affordable renting option. Those things might change in the future, and your property is going to want to work with your housing cycle. You know, as we know, things change every 5 to 10 years, you know, and we might need that space for a family member. So it's really good to have that in mind when you're considering it. I know that there's about 3 or 4 people on here who haven't even started, but are having difficulties with time. Is there something that they can do prior to looking for referrals to set a realistic time frame?
Can I repeat your question so I know I've understood it?
Yeah, so basically you haven't started your project, you know you want to build, but you don't have a lot of time. So maybe you can't go to the permitting office yourself, or you know, you have the funds, but you need assistance through the process. You know, what would you recommend people prior to starting?
I think Anne Marie's talking about you don't have a lot of time during the day
Yes.
as a homeowner to be able to participate in this. Yeah.
Yes. So the best, if you, as a homeowner, if you don't have time, the most important thing is choosing the right architect or designer, because they're doing their running around for you. It's their responsibility to go to the city to find out what's possible. What as a homeowner you're paying for is to be able to remove that headache off you. You are trusting your architect to not only be able to visualize and design and be able to put on paper what you want, but to be able to get all of the city plan check permit documents done. All you're doing is paying for that. So you want to hire the right person who can guide you through the entire process. You don't have to know anything. You just need to hire the right architect who knows how to do the entire process. Does that help?
That does help. I was just, the questions that are coming up in the chat are just amazing. Thank you, Gina and Andrew, for addressing some of those questions. Do you want to elaborate on either one of them? Well, Carol, I'm going to address your question about homes on eBay or on Amazon. There are some modular homes, but the issue with the modular home, and if anybody else wants to speak on it, is that there is no plumbing hookup. There is no electrical hookup. Once you get it on your property, you still have to do all the engineering. You're not going to get around that. So you might have to put in a new gas line or a new sewer system. And that's why Pooja mentioned that sometimes it's just better to use your existing structure and build off of it. So, you know, like what we call a junior ADU.
So what a good architect will do is they'll do a feasibility study so that they can actually, you know, put in, you know, conceptually where your ADU goes. How does it connect to the existing house? Once all that is taken care of, they will recommend or they will bring in a structural engineer. The structural engineer, and if necessary, they'll bring in a civil engineer as well. So your architect should be able to get all the right consultants to bring your entire design together. So, you know, your architect is like your designer and your little project manager, if you will, who strings all of these consultants together to make your project happen. And if you'd like, you can, because I'm trying to answer the question, so I can't read through the chats. If you'd like, you can just repeat a question that has been asked, and if I can answer it, I will.
Sure. One of the questions was, can you build over a garage in Altadena, unincorporated Los Angeles?
Yes, you can. You can build up to about 20 feet or 24 feet. Andrew?
Not quite sure. Yeah, I know. But one thing to recognize is that Altadena is County of Los Angeles, and County of Los Angeles has been very supportive of their ADU laws and how they participate in getting unpermitted and permitted units past the board. So they do have a design guideline. So it's just a Google search to look for the ADU standards for County of Los Angeles, and they have a PDF that kind of gives you those ideas.
Yeah, so
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and most jurisdictions, I think Pasadena might be a little different in terms of height, which is hopefully going to change, right? And but most jurisdictions will allow you to go up to 2 floors.
Except Pasadena, which we're working on changing that as part of what our goal is here.
Yes, exactly. Which
I hope that everyone here who's in Pasadena will send a message to their councilman and let them know that they want to build above garages. That would help our advocacy tremendously.
Right. And it all depends. Sometimes there is no other way but to build over your garage. So, but sometimes there are other options available as well. And so, a good architect will walk with you and be able to say, here are some other ideas that you can explore as well that would be much better for you than what you're thinking, because it'll be better use of your site. So, sometimes what an architect, because they've done so many projects, they're also visual people, they're able to come in from, they're able to suggest more than one idea for you to think about, that you might say, oh, I didn't think about that. Well, yeah, that could satisfy all of my needs. I don't necessarily have to build over my garage. Because remember, when you build over your garage, you're underpinning the foundation. And you've got to do a lot more stuff. So sometimes building over garages can become expensive. And so it's really important to think, walk through your architect and think, well, what's possible? And so that's what your architect is able to do, or your designer is able to do, is a feasibility study as to what are your other options. I think Len asked a question as well. I just saw it somewhere in the chat, but there's so many questions right there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to request you to.
Sure. Yeah, Pooja, my question was just kind of, I know it depends on each site, but what's your sense of the ballpark ballpark costs of designing a garage, like a range for designing a garage for typical garage version versus say a 400 to 500 square foot detached ADU? And again, I realize that there could be a significant range there.
Right. So Len, unfortunately, I won't be able to give you a number. Mm-hmm. What I will be able to do is explain to you how a designer or an architect charges, and then we could do a one-to-one conversation. Yeah. But any designer or architect will calculate their fee in three different ways to cross-check the fee, and a good architect should be able to explain that to you as well, and share that with you. And I'm always happy to do that. One is based on time and materials, like how much time are they spending on the project, and therefore what is their hourly rate to do so. Then percentage of construction cost, those things often work well together. And so an architect or a designer's fee is based on percentage of construction cost as well. Because you realize that, let's say that you do want to do have high-end finishes. You want to have a glazing. You do want to be able to explore the volume of your space. You prefer to have windows that slide completely open, which is called the nano wall system. Some people are looking for an inside outside experience, right? Because we live in California. And so, those items then end up having far more detailing associated with it. And so therefore it becomes a percentage of construction cost, right? And so, and then there is a design fee cost based on square footage as well. And so there's no really one size fit all, but those are the ways in which an architect will charge. And so a designer could charge anything between sort of 10% of your construction cost up to 15 to 18% of construction cost. Those are the numbers. The smaller the project, the higher the percentage, because sometimes it's the smaller work that ends up being, it's the same amount of effort that it takes. Now, what I said, 10% to 18% is for a full scope of work when you talk about interior design, right? So it's a 10 to 18% is based on a full scope of work, like you're doing the proper interior design and things like that. Now, if you're only looking for somebody who comes in just for permitting purposes, you're not really interested in the design aspect of it, then that percentage goes out the window, right? Then you're sort of like tailoring the scope for exactly what you want them to do. But one thing that I always like to say is that, when you come into the housing renovation world, people look at Pinterest and they look at, they create their own boards and then they think I can do this and I can do that. Just if it's great that if you can do that, just make sure you're able to execute it, because there's a lot of do-it-yourself projects that don't go the right way. And sometimes it's good to know what your own limitations are and, just, don't be penny wise, pound foolish is what I like to say to my clients.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I did see an article today about a father and daughter who did a DIY ADU, and it was $200,000. And they didn't use an architect, a designer. They did it all themselves and subcontracted work. And that example to me was it was very fitting to say that you don't always save money. And I'm the perfect example for that. You don't always save money by trying to do shortcuts. And that's why it's really important that before anyone tells you how much your project is going to be, that you know how much you can afford. So, if you start looking at Zillow or Redfin, you can tell me which house you like, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to afford that house. So I think it's really important that we focus on what the purpose is and what our budget is. And then we present that to our team so that they can work within your budget, if it's even feasible. So, saying I have $10,000, make me an ADU, probably not possible. Oh, I think there's two more questions. Jill, would you like to ask your questions?
Yes. There was a question earlier. I'm not sure, maybe it was answered, but in regard to parking requirements, I think that would be important to know. And the other question had to do with, I think it's 150 feet extra square feet that's allowed, where it could be kind of a cantilevered out, especially if it's on a second floor. So if you could speak to that.
I'll speak to parking first. And so in your home, as long as you are able to if your home is deeded for a 2-car garage, right? And that it's deeded to be able to park 2 cars in it, then as long as those cars can be parked on the property, even if it's tandem, which is one behind the other, then you do not need to provide additional parking for your ADU as long as you are half a mile away from a public transit stop, like a bus stop, or within half a mile of a flex car, which is like an Uber, like a resident who owns an Uber, or
I told you to put it by the gate.
or a shared car. So that's about parking, and that's for a single family residential. And then I think you talked about 150 feet extra space allowed. I know that, and Andrew or Gina, you may be able to help me with this maybe. I know that you can build a maximum of up to 1,200 square foot of ADU. In some cases, it's 1,000 square feet of ADU. And then after 700 and, up to 750 square feet, like Anne was saying, you don't have to, pay that certain fee. But I'm not 100% sure to the 150 feet extra space allowed, or maybe I'm misunderstanding it. Andrew, do you understand the question?
Sure. So the 150 square feet, and I just put the text into there, is that when we're doing a conversion of a space, we're allowed to add 150 square feet to it to allow ingress and egress. So sometimes when you're doing a conversion of what was, say, a junior ADU, we can't always have doorways there. And so that 150 square feet gives us access to allow a doorway in and a doorway out. And what it does is give Pooja the ability to really make it work, because it wasn't always designed that way. And so that it gives her the way to make sure that we can get in, ingress, and get out, egress. And that's what that 150 square footage is.
A follow-up question then, if it's only for ingress and egress, is that how you say it? Then can it be used for other things or only for that?
Well, I mean, we get to call it whatever we want. And so, some of the projects Gina and I are doing, we're adding 150 square feet to each unit just to maximize it. But that's just the maximum that you can add to it when you're talking about these type of proposed projects.
So it could be a bedroom area that you could.
100%, yes.
Okay.
What it is allows the design to make sense. Whether that 150 square foot gets dedicated to the entryway or a bedroom, it isn't really dictated. More so when the planning department and the building and safety look at it, they're saying, this is where you at. You can only add this much more, this much more is the 150 square footage.
And that doesn't change as far as your cost with impact fees?
Well, anything over 750 square foot is entitled for impact fees. So yes, it does.
Okay.
The impact fees are, as we're seeing now more that we have more projects, are not as substantial as they used to be before. They now have to be in equation to the square footage. So it's not just a jump to 30,000. It would have to be what each square footage gets added to. So typically what we're seeing is a double in fees. So what it was at 749, it's probably double that, but it's no longer this giant increase. But in the beginning, it can be. I have a project that's 780 square feet, and it is $2,000 more on a $2,500 project. So you will still get the impact fees if you're over 750 square feet.
Is that just in Pasadena?
That is all over the state of California.
Are you finding more projects are under 750?
Typically, yes. A lot of garage conversions, a 2-car garage is typically a 400 square feet to 360 square feet. So when you're looking at 750, it's usually a new build. Usually your detached new build unit that's in someone's backyard or someone really trying to maximize the space. And typically the rental rate makes sense for it. So that's why they kind of pick that number. And most of them are. Not to say that we don't have projects that are bigger than 750, but the ones that are where the rental rate makes sense for the increase in fees and construction costs.
Now that we're all friends, if there's anyone who feels that their question hasn't been answered or would like to voice their question, because there was about 1,000 questions, I want to make sure we didn't miss anyone. Does anybody want to voice a question?
There was a question on the historic preservation ordinance that I'd like to talk about. Only the city of Pasadena that we're aware of has now passed the historic preservation ordinance. And please don't let that deter you away from doing a project here or an ADU here. We're still trying to learn the ropes of what it is. It just passed last month. And what it does is dictates any building that is 45 years older now has to be reviewed for historical significance. And that's to be determined what that is, but usually it's whether it's a star architect or some very decided, like a specific design. And so I wouldn't let that deter you away, but it's a new addition to what we were looking at before. And that's in Pasadena, but also cities like South Pasadena are doing it. It's a new tool that cities are using to get a little bit more strength where they didn't have before. But that's not to say that converting your garage is of historic relevance. Your garage probably is not historically relevant.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that in the city of Pasadena, when you change, the property changes hands, the city wants to see a set of plans, and they will actually inspect a set of what they have in record and walk through the house and inspect it and see if there were any changes made. And so that's particular to the city of Pasadena. And so you want to make sure that anything that you do is permitted, especially when it's structural changes or additions.
The next question was, are property taxes impacted?
Yes, I believe property taxes are impacted. Andrew, I don't know how what impact you've seen by experience.
Yeah, so property taxes are impacted, but typically when you do new development, it's where we reassess the property. With accessory dwelling units, it's what we call a blended tax rate. So when you are applying for your permit, in the very beginning, there's a valuation, and that valuation is what we're saying the cost is. In Pasadena, we do 30% of the cost if it's a garage conversion. So if your garage conversion was going to take $100,000, 30% of that, the valuation. Typically, we've seen it's 18 to 20,000 is the valuation. That valuation is going to be your new tax rate. So let's just say the tax rate is 1.25%. It will be of that valuation. So that number gets added onto your previous. We don't reassess the property. So whatever your home tax rate or your multifamily building tax rate is, we just add the ADU to it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be feasible if everything was reassessed at a new tax value. So it's called blended. We just add the ADU to whatever you were paying before. So it's the percentage rate of the taxes based on the valuation. And the city determines the valuation. They've gotten so good. At one point, it was based on relationships, where you would say, hey, I like you, so you get this number. Now there's a formula for it and they put it in. But as Maddie just got excited, it's a blended amount. They don't reevaluate your taxes.
Although that changes if you're on a hillside, by the way. So if you have a hillside property, it's still a little blended, how they're evaluating.
Mm-hmm. So I know that a lot of times affordable housing is, there's a tax abatement. And so I don't know if you're aware of any place that might give a tax abatement for someone that wants to do an affordable ADU with Section 8. And And then I also know that Carol Daly's been waiting to ask a question.
Sure. So I'm going to add something about, I don't know about the incentives, but I do know that both LA County, City of LA, and City of Pasadena, if you are committing to 10 years for a certain period of time based on the jurisdiction of the agency or the city you're in, if you could commit to, let's say, 10 years of Section 8 housing, then you do get, LA County is giving you about $75,000 which is a forgivable fee, if I'm not mistaken. Andrew, can you please correct me? If you were going to, for construction purposes, to build your ADU, if you commit to those 10 years of it being Section 8 affordable housing. And I think it's a sliding scale. So City of LA gives a certain amount. I believe LA County gives a certain amount. And I think City of Pasadena gives, and Andrew's the expert here, I think they give a loan at a very low rate of interest.
The loan for the City of Pasadena is a pilot. And so currently only 5 people are participating in that first round of the pilot. But this is a great segue to our next meeting. Our next meeting for the month of July is going to be focused on advocacy. And although we love ADUs, the purpose for this, for our advocacy, is in getting people to rent affordably and to incentivize people to rent affordably. And so we believe there's going to be some money coming towards Pasadena because of our current pandemic situation. So there's going to be certain money allocated to the City of Pasadena. I would strongly say that we should advocate that it should be to incentivize affordable building. So, you know, if you're interested in that, I would love to see your beautiful faces next month. I'll bring the donuts and the coffee via Zoom. If you'd like to join us, you know, we want to really focus on asking for that money to go towards housing and towards incentivizing homeowners to build affordably, to hire, you know, to hire local work, to incentivize our whole community to rent affordably. So I hope to see you all next month when we discuss how we're going to advocate to our mayor and our councilman, you know, how going forward. And I'm so grateful for you all. I'm going to give it over to Jill, our executive director, and she's going to invite you. Oh, I'm sorry, Shauna, did you want to say something?
Yeah, both Shauna and Carol have had questions. I think they need to.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just clapping.
Oh,
okay.
We're best friends, Shauna. I really hope you join us. We're fun. We're a wild group.
I will.
This is Leslie. She's my daughter. She just bought some property where we're going to put 2 ADUs.
Oh, hi, congratulations.
Awesome.
So you're part of the family already.
On John Kennedy Street.
So I think Carol's had a question. Yeah. If you can answer your question, Carol.
My question is just repeating something that either Pooja said or Andrew. When we were talking about the no impact fees under 750 feet, you were talking about, was it $200,000 it was 200 and they were paying only $2,000 extra. Can you explain what that was that you said?
It was a park fee. It was a park fee for that goes towards the parks. That's what that was equated to. So it's an impact fee. Impact fees are fees that the city puts towards what a residential impact is, and this one was $2,000 that's dedicated to the parks department.
Okay, and that was for how much over the 250 though?
And so this math will not work in every municipality and every other, but right. it was for 400 feet over.
400 feet over? Thank you.
40 square feet.
40. Okay, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
sometimes there's school fees, there's all different fees that cities add. And so you really need to, one of the things we're advocating for is that we can have a list of all those fees up front, so we're not surprised and we can see whether we can really afford to do this or not. It's been a great group here tonight, and I'm going to put in chat another event I'm going to be inviting you to. And I hope that you can all join us in 2 weeks. Is that 2 weeks? No, it's actually at the end of June. And that would be 3 weeks from now, I think. It's the 4th Tuesday of the month. And we have a speaker on NIMBYism. You might not have heard that term before. It stands for Not in My Backyard. And we're all saying, of course, here, we want ADUs in our backyards. But there's a lot of folks that are saying no to any kind of higher density in their communities. And they don't realize that that's the very thing that ends the housing crisis we're in. We need to have appropriate density in the right places, and in order to get the housing built we need. We're in a major housing crisis. There's been 60,000 in LA County that are without a home. And in Pasadena, in our last count, 527. And so we have to build in order for that to happen, but it has to be affordable. So that's what our organization is about. But how do we encourage people to make sure the housing gets built? And so we have a fabulous speaker from San Pedro. She's a pastor, and she's basically ended all of this negativity toward density and toward not building in her community. So we're going to learn from her what is she did to help really change the environment in her area. So look forward to that, put that on your calendar. And we are part of a larger organization. Making Housing a Community Happen has 7 teams. You might be interested in one of them. I'll put our website on here so you can get to know us. You might want to sign up for our newsletter. We also have a need to know you. And so if you, just because you've signed up for Zoom, in this case, it is through registry, you registered. And so we do have your contact. So we hope you don't mind that we invite you to this. If you prefer not to be on our list, let us know. You can always unsubscribe. But let me put in here our website. It's www.makinghousinghappen.com. So check us out and our 7 teams.
Jill,
And
why wouldn't they want to join our team? We're so fun.
yeah, well, I hope they do. We'd love to. We really need some additional advocates to join us. So Shauna, we'd love to have you, Maddie, others that might be from Pasadena area. We primarily are advocating to right now to Pasadena, but we're not opposed to advocating to the state. As Anne-Marie mentioned earlier, part of the reason we're able to have not just 1, but 2 on a property and throughout most of the state, we're still working on that for the city of Pasadena. And part of the reason that we can build no matter your property size is because of our advocacy at the state level. So we can't get it done locally, we go higher, we go to the state. So yeah. But thank you, Anne-Marie, for allowing me to share.
Oh no, thank you, Jill. And I again, my heart is full. I'm so grateful for you all. The level of information that we've received tonight, I can tell you that it is, it's priceless, you know, to be able to speak to experts who are giving of their time. You know, they've just spent a 12-hour day and then they're here volunteering with us. So very grateful. And I hope to see you all in July, and maybe by August we'll be in person and I'll bring the tamales. But I really do hope that you all help advocate, even if it's just sending an email to your local city councilman. You know, just advocating for support in affordable housing, because that is ultimately our goal. You know, we are a community and we are a faith-based community. We're open to all, but we really do hope that you join us in this fight. We know we can end homelessness. Thank you so much.